So today we're going to be talking about how to place and align your transfers. We're going to be showing you how to place your transfers, so how to position them, how far below the neck, when you're placing the pocket logos, like where do you position that? How big do you make your transfers? That's a very common question. It's a very good question because you don't want to make it too big, too small. So we're going to be covering all that today. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So today we're talking about pressing and aligning, and a lot of this you see right behind me there. I got my whole setup. I got my t-shirts ready. I got my transfers ready. And then one thing I just wanted to talk about really quick was the tools that I'm going to be using. And so for this is what I'm going to be using today. So our graphic alignment system, which is basically what we call this bundle here. You get the T-square, which is that X tool, and the logo grid, which is this little funky thing right there. I'm going to be showing you how to use both of those today. These are big parts of how to align your transfers properly, especially when you're first getting started. Now, one thing you will learn is you'll get pretty good at developing your eye. Humans, we naturally, our eyes and our brains naturally appreciate symmetry when things are perfectly centered and aligned properly. But being able to do that does take some training on your part. So anyway, so these tools, some folks say, can't you just get a yardstick or a ruler? And the answer is yes, you can. But as you're going to see today, especially if you're just getting started with heat pressing, these tools can be invaluable to the beginner. And you see, yes, I do have a ruler here. And yes, I also have my T-square. Okay, so now a lot of people, if you're like me, what you do is you'll put your t-shirt, and I do have my heat press here, but we're going to be showing you right here. If you do have a heat press, what you do, if you're like me, is you'll put the t-shirt on the press, and then you'll put your transfers on the shirt after it's already on the press. Now, I don't, for this demonstration, I'm not going to be doing that. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is sizing. Now, for today's demonstration, I'm using a size medium. This is a Gildan, you probably can't read that, but this is a Gildan soft style t-shirt, size medium. Medium is a sample size. It photographs really well, and this is just what we're using. It is one of the more common sizes. And so for medium t-shirt, so there's two main ways to size your graphics. One thing you'll notice next time you're at Walmart or Target, and yes, it does say heat press and chill. Next time you're at Walmart or Target, grab one of the small shirts and then grab one of the XX shirts. What you'll notice is the graphic usually looks really good on the small shirt, and then once you get to the XX shirt, you're getting the same graphic, but the shirt is getting larger and larger and larger, so it doesn't look as good. So there's two ways to do sizing. You could do standard sizing, which is where you pick a fixed width. This graphic measures 9 inches wide, left to right. Most graphics, you're going to measure them wide. So this graphic measures exactly 9 inches left to right, which is perfect size for a medium t-shirt. Now, standard sizing means you're gonna have the exact same graphic no matter what size t-shirt, or usually up to an extra large or a double extra large. So even though this is 9 inches, the t-shirt's gonna get bigger and bigger and bigger. The graphic is gonna stay the same. That's standard sizing. And this is where you could take notes. Oh, by the way, we do have a really good and extensive blog coming out covering what I'm talking about today, but it's also going to have a downloadable PDF with a reference guide. So if you're not taking notes right now, no worries. We're going to have that next week, and it'll be a downloadable PDF, which is really cool. But if you're taking notes right now, 9 inches is a standard size for a medium t-shirt. Now, if you're wondering, well, what about all this extra t-shirt space right here? You don't want to fill it out. No, because the human body is not a flat, we're three-dimensional. So it starts to curve off right around here. So since it curves right around there, you see that now? Anything beyond this area is gonna be on the side of the body and won't be able to be seen. So you want your graphic to be legible, so you don't want it extending too far, like to the edge of the garment, because when someone actually puts it on, they're only gonna see this part, right? The rest is gonna be wrapped around the body, and you won't be able to see it. So anyway, so standard sizing says 9 inches for this graphic, and maybe you have a bunch of them to do and you don't feel like doing different sizes. Now there's another thing called graduated sizing. Now graduated sizing says This, and what I do for my graduated sizing is my small t-shirts, 8 inches, my medium t-shirts, 9, large, 10, extra large, 11, double extra large, 12, triple extra large, and so on and so forth. That's graduated sizing. When you're working on a project, right? Give me 1 second, I'm grabbing something from the other room, but you can still hear me. When you're working on a project, you don't like a one-off project, like someone says, hey, I just need this one shirt, and please make sure you're charging them your custom pricing. You're charging your custom price and say, hey, I need one shirt that says heat press and chill, or it says farming and chill, it says halo and I don't know, whatever it says, right? So you're doing one custom t-shirt, and you ask them, okay, what size t-shirt? And they say extra large. If you're doing just one, I definitely recommend graduated sizing, which is, okay, you're making only one shirt, you're not making a bunch. Okay, it's an extra large shirt. I'm gonna size my graphic around 10 or 11 inches wide, so it really fills out the chest real nice. This shirt that I'm wearing, for example, which you saw a little earlier, my graphic measures 12 inches left to right, and it's on a XXX shirt. So you have about, an inch giveaway. So for individual shirts, go ahead, use graduated sizing. If someone orders a small and a large, you can ask them. Most of my clients, who I'll just do it anyways, if they're ordering a small quantity of shirts, like, hey, I need 2 smalls of this and 1 large of this. So for the small, I'll go 8 inches. And then for the extra large, remember, you add an inch for every size. So if the small is 8, medium's 9, large is 10, extra large is around 11. I've actually found 10.5 works really good for my extra large. And this is something that's gonna vary by your project. So now this is gonna vary by size. Another thing you'll wanna consider is that this is a very short graphic. I think it's less than 3 inches top to bottom. It is exactly 3 inches top to bottom. Looks good on a medium shirt, but if this is going to be on a double extra large shirt, this tiny little thing is gonna look very understated and small. One thing I do want to cover really quick, we have a different graphic here. Oh, what dope, right? Very cool. This graphic actually, if you measure, and this is where you have to get creative with your sizing, I encourage you, whatever I'm showing you guys today, that's not a one size fits all. These are actually guidelines, so you can be more well informed when you actually come down and size your own graphics. This graphic, I sized it based on the circle. The reason why I did that is because the human eye, naturally, we're just drawn to like the main shapes, right? The graphic itself, if you measure it from edge to edge, which is going to be this edge down here to this edge right here, so these 2 corners, if you measure it from this edge to edge, it actually measures about 10 1/4, I want to say. But when we measure the inside circle, it's just under 9 inches. So if I had gone with the 9-inch method, because this part, is kind of hanging off the edge, this part's kind of hanging off the edge, if I would have shrunk this down, it would look a lot smaller and probably would not, in my eyes, I probably wouldn't like it as much. So whenever you have graphics that, they're not perfectly symmetrical, they have extra stuff going on here, extra stuff going on here, you might want to consider, well, what's the main shape? Like, what is the main graphic? What part of the graphic are people's eyes drawn to? And then also on that same note, you don't want to center it by the whole graphic, you want to center it by the circle, because people aren't going to give you, and I'll actually, I'm getting ahead of myself. So yeah, so you definitely, again, these are not 100% one size fits all rules. These are kind of guidelines to help you get started off on the right foot. If you want it to be oversized, like if that's your style, some things look really cool oversized. If you want it to be understated and just be a really small little 6-inch circle, go for it. The style of your design is always going to supersede, the guidelines. That's why, again, they're just guidelines. You could move them around, make them, break them, do whatever you want to make them fit your graphics. So here's how we use a T-square, and I'm going to show you on the table. The cool part about heat transfer vinyl is it comes on like an adhesive backing. So I could just carry this over to the heat press if I wanted, and it shouldn't really move anywhere. So here's how we use the T-squared. So you're gonna layer, and it's best to practice if you just got a T-squared, you're trying to figure out how to use it. I recommend practicing on a flat table. It's a lot easier. And then, especially if you're using heat transfer vinyl, you just kind of pat it down and you can carry it over to your heat press. Okay, so here's how we use a T-squared. You're gonna get the T. It has these cool little. Oh, you can't see. I'm sorry. It has these little rubber feet. And it even has instructions right on here. It says align seam of apparel with arrows. So when it says align the seam, it's talking about this top seam right here on the collar. And you know, maybe I could move this down a little bit to show that off a little bit better. So I'm gonna align the top with the seam of the arrows. There we go. And here's how I'm gonna center this T-square to the T-shirt. So the way you do it, and it looks like I actually got pretty darn close right here. So the inside of the collar, right now it's at about 2.5 on this side, and it's at about 2.5 on this side. If it was like over here, then the edge of the collar would be hitting 3 over here and 2 over here. So you know it's not centered. You want it evenly. It's not always going to land perfectly on the 2.5, but in this case it did, and I am excited about that. So you're going to align it here. Another thing that you can do with the T-squared on most size T-shirts, this is the center piece, and you can see here, I think you can see, maybe not see, there's a little track right here. So what you do is you put this in the track, and now it slides up and down. And I'll show you why that's important. But what you could do is if you want to make sure the T-squared is perfectly aligned, you can just measure armpit to armpit. And I could probably afford to go a little bit right there. There we go, armpit to armpit, right at the seam point. I got, and just let it, you don't want to stretch it. I got about 22.5 over here, and I got about 23 over here. So now what that tells me is this T-shirt is not like perfectly centered. Also, this T-shirt was folded a little funny. So I'm going to readjust here. And this is kind of a long way. I'll give you a hint. You don't really want to like bite down. Like, as long as you're aligned with the top, it should be good. But for the sake of being thorough, there we go. So I'm at about 22.5, or if you're looking at the big numbers, I'm at about 10 and 10. So now I know that this is perfectly aligned with my T-shirt. Okay, so placement. Usually there's a sweet spot, all right, between the sternum, which is about right here, and of course, all humans, we're all different sizes, okay, but in general, there's a sweet spot in the chest, and the chest usually measure from the sternum to the neck. There's a sweet spot right here, right about here. It's not, I've heard some people say, oh yeah, center it with the armpits. If you're wearing a really fitted T-shirt, that might work. For most T-shirts, that's not going to work. I have centered things to the armpit. For example, let's just say, and I'll flip this over so it could slide better. If I centered this graphic with the armpit, it would be right. It wouldn't be terrible. Actually, that might be okay on smaller shirts. But on larger shirts or looser fitted shirts, for whatever reason, the arms get bigger. And sometimes the armpit will droop a little lower. And if you center it with the armpit, especially on larger, looser fitted shirts, you might end up closer to the belly than the chest of your garment. So armpits are not always the best place to measure. What I prefer and what has worked out really well for, especially for a lot of people, if you've been to screen print shops, you'll notice that sometimes on their platens, they'll mark it like where the neck should be. Most people are going to measure distance below the neck. 2 to 3 inches is pretty good. And let me grab my ruler. I mean, well, these are marked off, but so what I'll do is, so this is 2 inches below, right? So We're at about 1.5 here. You know, I'm just gonna do the math on camera, whatever. We're at about 1.5 right here. That's where the collar is. Oops. That's where the collar is hitting. Is it hitting at about 1.5? So if you add 2 inches, you're gonna go to 3.5. That's about where the top of the garment, the graphic should be. Now, if you wanted to take it to 3 inches, you can go a little lower to 4.5. You don't really want to go below 3 inches. Now, for smaller garments, I'll do 2 inches. And then for larger garments, I'll do 3. And so for example, I'm going to center this. This is going to go, and this is just one way to do it, by the way. This is 2 inches below, right? What I'll do is I'll just do this. And this is just one way to use the T-square, by the way. Align it, center it, pull it down, and then boom. Now, I didn't do that right. It's going to be centered. And then what you could do is you could just realign it, put it back. Make sure this is all cute. And sorry, the numbers are upside down for you. There we go. 23, I want it centered right there. There we go. So now my T-squared is aligned. And here's how you use it to make sure that your graphic is aligned. Now, remember I said with this garment, you don't want to align it by the whole graphic because people's eyes are naturally going to be drawn to the circle here. So I'm only going to align the circle, not the farthest edge. It's okay if that sticks out. It's not going to look funny. If I aligned it by the whole graphic, it would be shifted over just enough to where people say, wait, why is the circle not centered? It's just the way your eyes are drawn to shapes. So I'm going to slide this, and that's why I like it, right? You slide it to the edge of the circle, and the edge of the circle is coming in right about the 8 mark, or 9, depending on how you count it. This one right here. And on this one, it's actually right there as well. I think there is a, if I'm not mistaken, probably like a 1/16. And here's where you can like literally, like you can see the top of my head right now. You can like literally put your head over it and look down. I think it's actually aligned pretty darn perfectly. If it's off by only like 1/16 or less of an inch. So it's coming out to the 9 right here. It's coming out to the 9 right here. And so this graphic is centered and it's ready to go. So what I did was I placed it, I measured the collar, I placed it 2 inches below the collar. And so now this graphic is ready to go. Now here's where I would probably, on a same size, we're still working with a medium t-shirt. Here's where I might go down to 3 inches below the neck. And that's for this graphic. Remember, this graphic is a shorter graphic. So if I went 2 down on the neck, which is about right here, it might seem a little high for some people. All right, this is right below the neck. It's not coming down past the armpits. It might seem a little high. So here's where I might consider adding an extra inch and going down about 3 inches, which is just for quick reference. Yeah, oh man, my eyes are good. So that's when I would consider, if you have a really short graphic, again, there's like an imaginary sweet spot between a person's sternum and the bottom of their collar where you kind of want to center it into there. And if you go by these sizing, it's really hard. Again, everybody's different shape and size. But if you want it to look good on your t-shirt, it's easiest to just go distance from the neck. 2 to 3 inches is almost always perfect for larger shirts. And once you start getting into plus sizes like XXX, which again, I'm wearing a XXX t-shirt right now. I make them all the time for myself. You want to start at 3 inches for your plus size t-shirt and then move down as necessary. And yeah, and using a T-squared is that simple. Now we do have another tool here called the Logo Grid It. Somebody was asking how to place neck logos. This is like, when I first started making t-shirts, I did not use any alignment tools and I didn't use any reference. I just kind of thought, hey, the pocket, it should be closer to the arm. And so what I did was I would place them like way over here, right? And they looked stupid when you put it on. They looked ridiculous. And what I found is the best way, and me again, I'm going to show you how to use the Logo Grid It right now, by the way. The way I do it is I will get the center. Oh, by the way, if you have a heat transfer, oh, it was the focus. I lost focus. There we go. There we go. What I'll do is I'll just fold it in half and just pinch it and that'll let me know where the center is. Cool trick, huh? There we go. And so what I'll do is I'll get the center and I'll center it with the garment, with the collar, drop it, and I'll drop it like about 2 inches. Now, when you have it on the flat, it looks like it's a little bit too close to the center, but in most cases, when a person puts this shirt on, you know, their neck's gonna stretch it a little bit, they're gonna wear it a little bit. That's actually really good placement. So you're gonna wanna, so here's how we do it with the logo gridded tool. You're gonna center this little point right here with the, and you're gonna trust that the collar, that the tag is centered on the collar. But it kind of, I mean, for the way we're gonna use this, it almost doesn't matter. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna measure out where is the center of the seam of the collar. You don't have to be the center, you can be the edge, whatever. I usually go right smack in the middle. So it's at 4.5, all right? Or you can even, I mean, honestly, you can just shift it over to make it a perfect 4.5, 4.5, right? It's a grid. 4.5 up here, you see the 4.5 down here, that's where it is. Now, the bottom of my shirt is hit right at the 3, okay? So I'm gonna add 2 inches, 5. So where is the center? And that's for center, right? The center of my graphic is gonna be at 4.5 and 5, it's gonna be right there. So that's gonna be the top, and the center is gonna be right there. All right, just so you could see, just to get a visual of where it's supposed to be. If you're on a medium or smaller shirt, you can actually go down to like 1.5 inches below the collar. You know, that's up to you. And so then what you're gonna do is, another thing, which actually might be easier. So 4.5 right there. We're just gonna lift this up. And then you see the kind of the grid. I want the top and center right at 4.5 and 5. You're gonna lower it down. And this is where you're gonna kind of just like trust it a little bit. And I got it pretty close. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm just gonna pick it up, and we're just gonna do little small micro adjustments until this thing is, the center is right at 4.5 and 5. So I need one last micro adjustment. I'm gonna fit it there. Now this is going to get you uniform results. Now here's one thing about pocket logos. Companies will often order these for their staff, for polos, and if your placement is not uniform, if it's all over the place, when people go to visit that company and they look at the shirts, dude, it just looks dumb. It looks really funny when everybody's graphics are all wonky. Some are up here and some are here and some are here. You want uniform placement. And what's cool about this, what's cool about chest logos is regardless of the size, I'll always center the center with the edge of the garment, with the edge of the collar, I'm sorry, and then go down about between 2 and 3 inches, actually 1.5 inches to 3 inches, 3 inches on the very, very largest ones. But this placement, like, it actually works out pretty good in my experience. If you don't believe me, do me a favor, get a business card, hold it up to have someone put on a t-shirt, and just like tape it to their shirt. When they take it off, you can measure it, and you can also use those. But these are what has worked really good for me. Again, if you want, you could just get a ruler, center, like, you know, you could do that, whatever. I do like the, or you could just eyeball it, and then the logo gridded tool, what I've seen a lot of people do is they'll, with masking tape, they'll just mark it off. So it's really easy. And then you can even have it right here. What I've seen some people do is they'll have it right here or whatever, so you have access to this space to move it. Logo gridded tool, I dig it. You can do the same thing with the T-square, but the logo gridded tool is just a great tool for helping make sure everything's uniform. I really do like having, I mean, this is the company one, so I don't mask it, but I really do like having the masking tape on here. So that way, even if you're just moving, you could just, eventually you'll be able to eyeball it, right? Eyeball it, but then if you wanna be sure, put the logo gridded down, you're like, oh, I'm off by like a little bit, scoot it over, and you're good to press. Again, this one, I went with business card sizing. This is 3.5 inches wide. And I love that width, especially for horizontal logos. If a company asks for bigger, go bigger. These are just guidelines. Now we're going to talk about the back of the shirt. This one is you have a little bit more free space sizing on the back of the shirt. I feel like you could definitely go bigger. This graphic that I'm about to show you is a name and number. I'm going to give you a quick disclaimer about names and numbers. If you're doing them for any sort of league, the league more than likely has requirements or standards for how the sizing of the numbers should be. For example, some leagues will tell you the letters can be no larger than 1.5 inches high. The number on the back have to be 12-inch or 10-inch or 8-inch high numbers. So usually it's a height restriction on the name and the numbers. But if not, if you're just making this for fun, you could really do whatever you want. Okay, so this is a name and a number. This one measures 10 inches wide for a medium shirt. One thing that I have found is on the mediums, earlier I mentioned on the front, you're probably going to want to stick with 9, and on the back, you can add an inch and go with 10. Again, these are just guidelines. When you actually, and this is a long name, if you know, you kind of don't want to max out bigger than 10 inches. And honestly, doing names and numbers, that's a whole other topic. But what I found is for mediums, let's say even if this was a full printed graphic, 10 inches should look good on a medium. For a back, especially if you don't mind it being a little bit big. 11 inches is pushing it a little bit on a medium kind of retail fit t-shirt. So if you want my guidelines, my personal guidelines that I use, and again, I stray from them all the time, not all the time, occasionally when the graphic calls for it. On a medium, I said for the front earlier, be 9 inches. On the back, we're going with 10, and I think it's going to look pretty good. Now for placement, you can't see this probably, but the collar is right here, okay? Now, when you're on a heat press, what you don't want to do is you don't want to press near the collar unless you have a T-pad or something like that. But in any case, the only way to get around this, you could insert a pillow inside the shirt, so so you're not pressing the collar, but you really don't want this collar on your heat press. As a result, the highest you can go with your graphic is right under the collar, right? And when I say the collar, I mean this right here. It comes out to about right here. So what you could do is you could place your graphic as close to the collar without touching the collar. Actually, you want to give yourself at least 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch. Close to the collar as possible. That's going to be your placement. And what's cool about that is that works for all sizes. So this is going to be right across the shoulders. You don't ever want to go too high. I mean, unless that's your style. One thing I've noticed is if you have a threadable heat press, meaning you can load the shirt to where, put the shirt directly over the platen, like inside, like you're putting the shirt on a person. Pressing up to the back collar, which right about here, it just doesn't look good when you put it on. Like, because, most people are like, hey, we don't all have like perfectly sculpted bodies, right? So there's a little bit of that kind of curve on there. So if you place your numbers like right, almost touching the neck, it just doesn't look good. If they have a little, longer hair, they're going to cover it. Even not that long hair or whatever, right? So what I found is placing it right below the collar, and when I say the collar, I mean even the front where that shows up back here, that's actually really good placement. And what's cool about it is it works for all sizes. So now all we have to do, so now we can align this. We're going to center this, and I'm aligning with the outside of the collar with the seam. And I think I did an okay job centering it. We're about to find out. Usually go by the armpits. And I think I need to scoot over just a little bit here. There we go. And that should be perfect. So now here's how we're going to do it. I'm going to slide this up. This far edge is coming just a little short of the 10-inch number. And this far edge, it actually is hitting 11. So what that tells me is I need to scoop my graphic over just a hint, just a hair to my left, your right. Now, in some cases, you can do this just by simply tugging on it. What you can also do is raise this up. Honestly, I'm going a little slow because I'm showing you. I would just do this and then just very carefully, right, loosen it from the garment scoot it over, just that hair that I was looking for. Center it. Do this really quick here. Get this matched up with the shirt. Right about, yes, right about there. There we go. Oh, wait, no. Yes, there we go. Okay, and now I'm right at the 10 over here, and I am just a little shy over here. So again, I'm literally off by like not even 1/8 of an inch. Most people wouldn't even notice that, but because I want to be professional, I do notice that. And because I haven't pat it down yet, I can just give it a little tuggy tug. If you want to make sure it's straight, you measure it up here, and then at the bottom we can also measure just a little over 7 over here, just a little too far here. So now what I've discovered is that it's a little bit skewed. And this is great. Again, we're training our eye. This is something that some people might not even, so it's just a little skewed. I'm just gonna tuck it this way. Get it straight. You might say, hey, that's a lot of time for really minor adjustments that nobody would notice. But first of all, if you're new to this, you're gonna be training your eye. Very important. Can't place enough stress on how important that is to train your eye to make sure things are straight, centered, and aligned. Secondly, dude, what's the harm in doing a good job? No harm at all. This is ready for the heat press, and the placement on here is going to be really good. Again, this is a medium t-shirt, so I went with 10 inches wide, and I think tall. This is like, we'll just use this to measure it. This is like almost 13 inches tall. So it's pretty big. Again, if you're doing this for a league, make sure you check league regulations. For little leagues, kiddie soccer teams, whatever, they usually have set how tall they want a max height for letters and a set height for the numbers. So make sure you check that out. Otherwise, if you're just doing it for fun, you can go by width, by height. I think these numbers are, let's just measure them out. Usually, if I'm doing these for fun, I'll have a set, like I'll have a max width for my letters. So for a medium shirt, I want my letters to not be wider than 10 inches. And usually between 1 and 2 inches tall for a letter is gonna be fine. These letters happen to be about 1 3/4 inches tall. You know, I usually don't let my letters get much bigger than 2 inches on this size t-shirt. These letters are 10 inches tall, and I should have remembered that, but I didn't. These letters are 10 inches tall. They're pretty skinny, and they look pretty darn good. If you have really fat, wide letters and you go 10 inches tall, it might take up too much space. For that, you can go like 8 inches tall. But these are pretty skinny, and so I went with 10. Again, double check your sizing. These are just what I use for fun projects. People want to put their name and number on a fun t-shirt, which is pretty common. All right, you guys, that's enough for me today. I thank you guys so much for joining us. Again, this will be available at heat.press, and I'm going to close off by showing you guys where to go for this. You can go to heat.press/webinar replay. And that's going to take you to, and these are this is everything. These are all the webinars, even the ones when we first went on quarantine, the webinars from my house with the funny black background. Anyways, all the webinars here. You get to see my ugly mug. Alrighty, that's gonna do it for me today. I'm done. I'm officially out. I've closed like 4 times. Thank you so much for joining. I hope everybody's staying safe, happy, and healthy, and we'll see you guys next week.